So when I picked up this approach from Joe Satriani in my late teens, it really changed my guitar life. I'm not exaggerating. And I'm gonna show you this approach in this tutorial here. It's not a particular technique. It's not one particular thing to do, but instead it's a kind of musical outlook that just blew my mind at that time around, where I was all caught up in studying scales, working on my technique, and just do what every guitar player, I think, first believes they need to do to become a well-rounded, confident guitarist. But Joe sure blew my mind. And it all actually started with this book here, which you see is very, very worn. It was in my basement drawer, so I had to go down and get it for you. But this is written in German, and some of the approaches here and some of the things that Joe talks about here really helped me to develop this approach. And then, of course, listening to his music and studying his songs. So before I really go into the details of what I'm talking about today, I want to play you one particular tune that demonstrates perfectly what I'm going to be talking about today. Wow, this really brings me back to my teenage years where I first learned that song. This is Crying off the Extremist album. So give yourself a favor and listen to Joe's version. If you don't know it already, the whole album is really great. And so what is the monumental lesson that I learned from Joe, particularly by studying this song? How can I sum it up? It took all my focus from being a guitarist to becoming what Joe actually is, I believe, becoming a singer on the electric guitar. For lack of words, for lack of having a strong voice, Joe just developed his lead guitar playing to a level where he can sing on a guitar. Of course, he was not the first one to do that. Probably started by Jimi Hendrix and his wah technique. And then, Jeff Beck for sure. He was a game changer, and he still is, up until today, is still the standard for playing lead guitar like a vocalist. But Joe Satriani also developed his own thing. And when I was a teenager and was all caught up in technicalities, Joe really got me out of that. And thankfully enough, I learned this piece, which is not an impressive show-off piece or so, but is a beautiful ballad where you really have to sing. So what are the requirements for you as a guitarist to start sounding like a singer? What are the requirements to cultivate that skill? Well, first of all, it's being aware of your note length. If you listen to Joe's version or also to my version here, there's a very clear differentiation between short and long. Let me demonstrate that over drone so you can maybe hear it better. So if we take that first melody here, Short. Short. Long. Do you hear how refined all these little nuances in the articulation are? So if you're not really paying attention in your soloing to which notes you play long, which notes you play short, then this should be the day that you start paying attention. First. Then second one, the use of your vibrato. So we probably all know that vibrato is important for rock guitar playing. You know, together with bending technique, vibrato is probably the fingerprint of a guitarist. So what is the important quality we need to have if you want to sound more like a vocalist? Well, I believe it's the ability to not just add vibrato everywhere, but add it very specifically and be able to let a note first develop before adding the vibrato on top of it. Yeah? Just think of a great singer who hits this gorgeous note at the end and then adds the vibrato at the very tail end where you would expect the note to already go away, but then the vibrato comes in. How beautiful is that? And let's try to imitate that here in our crying song. Yeah, I'm just gonna make one note example. Here comes a perfect example. Yes, were you able to tell how specifically I was adding certain vibrato on certain notes and leave certain notes completely straight with no vibrato? And then at the very last note, you know, I held the note and then I added the vibrato on the tail end. So that's exactly what I'm talking about here. And this is really the difference between just playing a bunch of notes versus really crafting a beautiful vocal line, you know, a singing melody where you kind of singing in your head, in your soul, you're singing that beautiful melody. I recommend you listen to Joe and also to Jeff Beck a whole bunch to get an even better feel for this approach that's gonna help you to develop a tone control and touch that will enable you to do this. Because let's face it, we're gonna need control of our volume knob, we're gonna need control of our pickup selector, which helps to change the timbre. I don't know if you were paying attention, but in the first performance that I did, I played the lower part on the neck pickup and then the higher part on the bridge pickup to give it a little more cut. So those things are also important. But the importance here of the volume knob and then also of the picking position, you know, once in a while I would use a little more edge to get a little more overtones and then play a little more mellow in other ways. And last but not least, using your fingers once in a while as well. I maybe didn't do it that much here, but using your finger and flash texture can also help to give you more vocal texture. To be able to control all these elements really took me years. No doubt about that. I'm still working on it, yeah. But the mindset shift from having the just guitarist perspective and go over and start developing my singer's perspective was an absolute game changer, and I'm still thankful to Joe Satriani for opening my ears and eyes to that. In that sense, I hope this was a valuable lesson for you. I want to invite you to check out my little booklet here. This is my Guitar Secrets book. It's called the LLG Method, the Layered Lead Guitar Approach, where I talk about a bunch of the essential techniques and lead guitar layers that I use for my students, TGT Academy, to turn them into confident and expressive lead guitarists. And if you also want to go down that route, then get this ebook, study these lessons, and then you're also going to learn more about TGT Academy. Who knows? maybe you and me are going to be working together someday as well. Keep on rocking and keep on watching this lesson here next.